All right, everybody, welcome back. For our final session today, we are pleased to present the BIPOC Gen Z Secular Activist Panel. Please welcome Clay Wesley, who will open and moderate. Please welcome Clay Wesley to the stage, who will open and moderate.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody feeling today? Awesome. We have a couple of our amazing young people here today, but to start us off, we will have our person leading this chat, Ms. Sikivu.
Okay, we're actually co-facilitating, but I did want to give some context. Good afternoon. I know that it's been a powerful, amazing, and long day. I am, again, Sikivu. I'm the founder of Black Skeptics Los Angeles, which is based in South LA, and we provide public education and humanist resources and support for African-American skeptics, freethinkers, atheists, humanists, and questioning folks, primarily in South LA, but also we do a national scholarship called the First in the Family Humanist Scholarship and Forward Free Thought Scholarship. And we initiated it in 2013 to redress the disproportionate prison pipelining of African-American, Latinx, and indigenous youth, with an emphasis on secular youth of color, undocumented youth of color, foster care youth of color, system-involved youth of color, and unhoused youth of color, because these are the populations, again, that are being disproportionately incarcerated and disproportionately marginalized and pushed out of our school systems. So again, this is the BIPOC Gen Z Secular Activists Workshop and Panel. As more young people become non-religious, they are unapologetically pushing back against racism, sexism, patriarchy, homophobia, transphobia, and other systemic norms that are exacerbated by religious fundamentalism. Despite these trends, the voices of secular Gen Z women of color have been marginalized. What are their lived experiences, and how are they changing the narrative of secular atheist humanist identity in the US? And what I will say as a practitioner, a resource provider, and a mentor and an educator who works in the K through 12 context, that I recently did a survey with Gen Z youth across the religious spectrum, who are youth of color, primarily African-American and Latinx, and that many of them had not seen any images of Black atheists, of women of color atheists, women of color humanists. So that is the context that they were operating from. This erasure, this marginalization, and basically disengagement with the authenticity and the diversity of our lived experiences. So I'm very happy to have these youth. This is the first Gen Z panel that we've ever had at Women of Color Beyond Belief. Let's give it up for these young people. Okay. They are teenagers, and in our apartheid higher education system, they're going to talk about that, be very candid and breaking those disparities down from their perspective. So continuing, if we could get their bios up, Sam. And then we're going to get to that video in a second. I'm Sikivu Hutchinson. Okay, great. Oh. Want to read their bios?
Awesome. So I'm going to take some time to read our awesome youth speakers, some of their bios as well. So our panelists are 2021 through 2022 recipients of the Black Skeptics LA's First in the Family Forward Free Thought Humanist Scholarship, co-sponsored by the FFRF. We have Miss MaryClare, who identifies as she, her, and hers. MaryClare is a 25-year-old Asian woman raised in Dallas area. She grew up as an atheist in a Catholic family and pursued environmental psychology for a bachelor's at Kalamazoo College and a master's at Seton Hall University. She currently works as a research analyst as an executive compensation firm in Chicago that is passionate about mental health, LGBTQ plus and reproductive rights, and she is excited to be participating in this panel. We also have Belen Padilla, who identifies as she, her, hers, who is the queer daughter of a formerly undocumented immigrants and is also passionate about combating race, based and class-based health disparities through domestic violence advocacy and healthcare-related activities. She also aspires to broaden undocumented immigrants' access to healthcare as a future neurologist and a nonprofit at the U.S.-Mexico border. Then we have Stephanie Avitia, hopefully I'm not butchering this, Pereira, who also identifies as she, her, hers, which is a first generation college student. So that was our amazing student who could not be here with us today. They are definitely here with us in spirit. You can go ahead and click to the next slide. So just for stats purposes to get you guys an understanding, this is the nuns, basically anyone who is not affiliated with any thing, maybe religiously or whatnot, in terms of young people on gender and race. And it kind of gives you guys an idea or viewpoint of how that varies, you know, between the races. You guys can skip to the next one too. Now this is more important as we are going to jump into our panel. These are religious traditions amongst Gen Z by race. Kind of give you guys a overview of what we're dealing with. And now also thinking of young people in this generation, back, I'd say about 20 years, it was very different and more when we think about acceptance and being able to live in our truth, right? So now let's jump into next slide. I will kind of loosely read this, but it's more information about Gen Z and BIPOC youth trends and belief. So the percentage of Americans who claim no religious affiliation now at 29%, with millennials and Gen Z driving this trend. According to some data, amongst 18 to 25-year-olds, 49% of women are religious nuns, or those who do not identify with organized religions, but may be faith-based, secular, atheist, or agnostic, compared to just 40% of men. Among the group, the vast majority are spiritual but not religious. Black youth are less likely to be religious and Christian than other generations. According to a 2021 article in Christianity Today, some Black youth are rejecting the silence and complicity that they seek in churches around racial justice and other social issues. 46% of non-religious Latinos are Gen Z youth. Can skip to the next slide. So as you guys see, this is a dynamic change that is happening today, currently. Trigger warning, and ground rules. As we are entering this panel, our young people are speaking in their truth about some very sensitive topics. So we just want to say that this panel will provide an open space for the critical and civil exchange of ideas, acknowledging boundaries and mutual respect. That said, some of the discussion may include topics that are traumatizing, uncomfortable, and upsetting. We strongly support folks seeking healthy spaces to reinforce their mental and emotional safety. And speakers, you guys know if you have any moment you need to draw back, please go ahead and let me know, okay? All right, we are jumping into these discussion questions. Why do you identify as a secular youth?
Any of y'all want to go first? But I'm open to do it first. All right. How far away should I be from the mic?
Hello, I'm Belen. I am a sophomore at Scripps College, which is a women's college in the Los Angeles area. I am a secular youth because personally, I believe in science. And on top of that, I'm queer and I'm a domestic violence survivor. And with that, I know that from my upbringing, I'm some background, I'm Mexican, I'm first gen. My parents immigrated from Mexico in search of a better life. But with that, they brought their ideas over, which that included the patriarchy that's in Mexico, that's very heavily machismo in Latin America. So my father brought those ideas to our new home in Los Angeles. And with that, he was very abusive to me. And so when I would like ask him, like, why does he treat my mom and I this way? He would always say that, like, God says that it's the man's job to put the women in place, and that God says, and just, he would continuously to use religion as a front to just justify his abuse. And like, you know, I like over the course of like the few years, like I think I was 8 when I started becoming more secular, that I was just like, if there truly is a God who claims to love his children, why is he causing me so much pain as a child? What did I do? I didn't do anything wrong that I know of. And even if I did, I'm 8. Like, that's insane. But like, you know, I use that basis to like slowly do some research on just being like, is it okay to not believe in God? I remember like being 7 and searching it up on YouTube because like my mom, my dad would like tell me I'd burn in hell, or like I'd die a gruesome death, or like I will never be protected in the Lord's eyes by things of that sort. But I mean, on top of that, like I'm queer, and when I like went to church, I remember them saying that like, you know, because I'm asexual, because I don't want to have sex with anyone because I'm asexual and I don't yearn for that, I'm not doing my job as a woman to give birth. And, you know, that just really just made me feel terrible that like, why am I not being accepted? Like, 1, I'm not believed for the abuse that I've endured. 2, I'm not accepted for who I am. And 3, I just believe in science. I'm pre-med. I want to be, like my bio mentioned, I want to be a doctor along the US-Mexico border. So I believe in science. I don't believe that, you know, people believe in like praying leads to healing. I think science leads to healing. I've never heard anyone say they're going to pray cancer away or like pray like a baby away. Like, no, you go to someone who is trained to give an abortion, someone is trained to be like, to give that, like, to give all that treatment. And like, I believe in all of that. In science, I believe in acceptance of all people, and I believe in survivors of domestic abuse and violence, which I've continued in my work now of on-campus advocacy and community advocacy. I do a lot of domestic violence work and healthcare advocacy, but that's my reason why I'm secular.
Okay, yeah, same as Belen. Well, I'm Stephanie, and I go to UC. I'm a sophomore at UC Berkeley, and coming from a Latino community, the older generation especially, they're like very religious based, and they like shove religion down your throat from the moment you were born. Like days, like soon after you're born, they take you to the church to like as like a presentación, which is like translation is presentation. So like they present you to God, and so as a scientist, we question everything, and it just never makes sense to me. Religion never makes sense to me, and I'm a science believer like Belen, and it's just I believe in science, and that's why I'm secular. Yeah.
I'm MaryClare. I think we have a very common theme here, and that we all very strongly believe in science and like evidence-based reasoning. And I think that like I was raised in the Catholic Church. Like I went to like a Catholic preschool, like went to Catholic school every week, stuff like that. And I think like nothing ever like really made sense like scientifically. Like how could there possibly be someone in the sky when there's like outer space in the sky as well? And like I think I was just like very confused about like why people are like all believing in this thing that like we couldn't see and didn't have any like basis in science whatsoever. So yeah, I think that's the main reason why I consider myself like atheist.
Great responses, ladies. The next question is, what key intersectional issues are important to your organizing, activism, and or educational experience? You can start it off strong, girl.
Hi, I'm Belen again. So some key intersectional, is the question again? Okay, important to my organizing. Some key intersectional issues that are important to me are immigrant justice and reproductive justice, since, you know, I'm pre-med. I'm not pre-med that I want to go into being an OB-YGN, but like the source of it that I believe in science, I believe in healthcare and the health disparities that exist within the secular community, also in Black and Brown communities as a whole. But specifically, like more so on, I'd like to start with like the immigrant stuff. I mean, like I mentioned, I'm the daughter of formerly undocumented immigrants. My parents immigrated to this country, and when they came here, and to this day, my mom has worked like being a housekeeper for the past like 40 years. And, you know, I always ask her like, Mom, do you really think a God like if he wants the best for you, do you think he constantly wants you to like suffer through like mold and like extreme poverty? And she says like, well, he's just testing me. And I'm like, I don't know if that's like a good way to look at it. I think that, you know, I applaud my mother for, you know, being a single mom and working very, very hard. But at the same time, I think she shouldn't like I don't think she should like look to God for that. I think she should try to like look to voting and organizing to like solve her issues rather than just pray that the poverty will go away or pray that like, you know, our neighbors that were deported, they'll just come back. Like, no, like, you know, I believe that there needs to be diversity in our medicine in that, you know, because most of the people who are like trained medical professionals, they are white, they are Christian. Because they tend to be white, most wealthy Christian families tend to like be and healthcare advocacy.
I mean, you don't. Do you want to answer?
No, yeah, I'm done. So there are many issues that are important to me as like a woman, low-income woman of color, and same as Belen. You know, like back in June, the U.S. Supreme Court, they no longer said it was constitutional to get an abortion, and right. Their decision negatively affects like POC, especially because we already struggle. We have like a barred access to healthcare already. And it shows further that the separation of church and state is crumbling, and that's very upsetting. And yeah, I know it's infuriating because you know, like based on the background of the Supreme Court justices that voted, you know that their decision was influenced by religion. And it's very frustrating. Yeah.
So a lot of my activism has not been so much in like reproductive and like health, I guess, stuff as much. I've been more like in college, I was more focused on like mental health activism. I was a psych major. I wanted to like become a psychology professor and go that route. And I think like throughout that sort of activism, I learned a lot about how like intersectionality can affect like mental health treatment. I think that there's this like very common like idea that like going to therapy, like going to church, like getting a good diet, like exercise and stuff is like the only way to like help with mental illness. And I think that like a lot of intersectional identities, like being like maybe disabled or being low income, being a person of color, adds a lot of barriers. And like, I think thinking about intersectionality can like help us maybe realize that there are like ways that we can help people make small steps towards something to make their like mental health or whatever better than saying that there's one size fits all that fits everyone. I think like thinking about intersectionality just generally makes us like a little bit thinking more about like the individual and like what the needs are instead of a blanket like response for everything.
Before I jump into the next question, just sharing some ideas as you guys are talking. You guys are like right on the ball with this, by the way. Intersectionality, diversity, and access, bodily autonomy, having access over your own body ownership. So I know that especially with what's going on with abortion rights, it really sucks that they're stripping everything that should be a human right? But now it's becoming somebody else's right somewhere behind a desk somewhere, which is nuts to me. So jumping into the next question, what pressures do you face as a young Black, Latinx, AAPI, secular, queer identified woman in a predominantly religious community of color? And I'll read that again because I feel like that was a lot. What pressures do you face as a young person, however you identify, queer identified, woman in a predominantly religious community of color? So what pressures are you guys dealing with?
So I'm adopted, so I actually grew up in a white family, but I grew up in Dallas, which is like fairly diverse. I grew up in a low income area, so it was not predominantly white. But I think it was also Texas is very Christian, not necessarily Catholic, but it's very Christian in like culture and like in school, even though I went to public schools, like you still are like taught like in a religiously oriented way. So I think that there's like kind of, for me, like I'm not a very like argumentative type of person, so I don't like to cause like discomfort or like just tension in general. So I think as a child, like I would like not like, I knew that I was like queer within like by middle school, and it's something that I like never brought up at home. Like I never talked about like reproductive justice or anything with like my family, and like I don't know how like anyone that I grew up with like stands on it. So I think for me it was more of like I just like felt silenced by that. But then I'm like lucky now that I live in Chicago, where I think it's probably one of the most like diverse in like thought and like cultural experiences. So I feel lucky to like have access to people and experiences that are not like oppressive in that sort of way.
So I feel like, especially in the Latino community, or older generations are still very heavily religious, and pressures that I feel like I face are just feeling like the odd one out because everyone's still like very religious, and it's just sorry, let me look at my notes because I don't want to miss any key points. So like they see you as like an evil one, as silly as it sounds. Like you said, like they mentioned like, oh, you're not religious, you're gonna go to hell, and like it's just another example. It's just like the stigma of being not religious from older generations. It's very like heavy. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I mean, a big part of it is that I'm queer, and my mom is very it's very confusing with her. She accepts me on a good day, but on a bad day she like doesn't accept me. Like it just depends on what type of mood she is. But like if it's on a bad day and I like tell her like, oh mom, my break's coming up for like school, can I like stay over? She's like, are you still gay? And I'm like, yes, I go to a women's college. Like, that's kind of why I went. So like a big pressure of that is like, you know, the financial restriction and like the housing restriction. But then like, you know, at the same time, it's okay because my brother is open to me and he lets me stay over. So shout out him. But I mean, like, you know, it's hard because like the pressure of like, you know, my mom, my single mom who raised me, and I don't want to disappoint her, but at the same time, she doesn't accept me for who I am. It's hurtful, but I mean, at the same time, I love her. It's hard, but you know, I feel like she's working on it, and it will only take time. I feel like I don't know, maybe I'm just being optimistic. But I mean, another thing that like I feel is very pressuring is that, you know, I want to be a doctor along the US-Mexico border. And with that, I specifically want to help immigrants who are crossing, the same immigrants that were my dad, my mom that were crossing. And those immigrants will come with those religious values. And like, if they ask me, do I believe in God? Will they allow me to treat them? I feel like that's another pressure on itself. Like, will my own community that I identify with as Latino, will they accept me when they know I'm queer? Will they, because I know like one of the biggest Latino like superstars, his name's Vicente Fernandez. He literally rejected a liver transplant that was going to save his life because the man that donated the liver was trans. So I know that like that spreads a lot to Latino communities, and the people who will immigrate here, will they accept my care? And like, will I have to live knowing that I couldn't save a life because they voluntarily like chose to either die, they chose to die because they did not want care from a queer Latina atheist woman.
Thank you guys for all those awesome responses. I think there's a lot of pressure that young people face in their very differing ideas and standpoints on religion, or on the shame that comes from others on their decisions of wanting to be free thinking or wanting to not be assigned to anything specifically. I just learned today that I'm a nun, which I didn't even recognize. I'm like, okay, cool. But as we think about pressures from family, from society, from even these institutions of education, of access to healthcare, which I think one of you guys said earlier, women of color being at the forefront of not being cared for in the best way possible. So these are all issues and pressures that I don't know if they're going away anytime soon, but I'm glad that you guys are on the ball with getting on board with things. The next question is, what do you think mainstream white atheists get wrong about communities of color? So we don't all have the same experiences, correct?
Let me check over my notes for a second. My bad. But like, what atheists get wrong about us? There's a lot, but like, let's start with like, first of all, we go through very different things just by the color of our skin, and which like white people will never understand what black and brown people will ever go through, like with police discrimination and like deportations and healthcare inequity, just that by itself. But on top of that, like if you layer that on top of that with the secular atheist aspect, that's a whole nother level, and which I wrote it down on my notes. I mean, what was the question again?
What do you think mainstream white atheists get wrong about communities of color?
I mean, I know that like atheists, it's very similar to like white feminism, that they think like people of the same identity go through the same thing. Like they think just because we're atheists, we go through the same things as them because they're also atheists and they understand us. But there's a whole nother layer, because culturally, like, to be atheist in a white household, it's more accepting. Like if you looked at the stats that you had up there, most like secular people are white, but yet like there's another added layer on top of that when like black and brown people are brought into the conversation. Like, like I mentioned, Stephanie and I were raised in Latino like households where being Catholic is a huge thing, but like it's not, I feel like in Mexico, we don't have like that same type of religious freedom societally compared to like, the white America that we have now, where like white people have more societal like religious freedom than we do here. Because like, for me personally, I don't know any like brown people like myself who are atheists, but I can name so many like white atheist people. Like there's a lack of community, and they think that, we have community because we have the white atheists. No, I want community in like my black, my brown, like women of color, but I will like, it's hard to find that.
I don't have much to add. Belen said it beautifully, but I would like to. I think why atheists. I feel like I wish they understood that the reason that POCs are religious is because of colonialism, and I wish if they understood that, I feel like there'd be more understanding of why we face different things as atheists. So yeah.
Oh, I forgot to add something, but like, on top of that, great job, Stephanie, by the way. White people tend to have like the financial security to even come out as atheists in the first place because they tend to be wealthier than us. But like black and queer people, black and brown people, like I mentioned, like, I'm very fortunate that my brother is very, very open to me being queer. But if it wasn't for him, I'd probably be homeless, because like I would just have my mom or maybe even if I wanted to accept my abuser, my father, but like neither of them would accept me for who I am. So like losing that financial and housing like is also a pressure that they will never understand, because they tend to like actually have the financial stability to even come out.
I want to piggyback on that idea of people of color being shunned or being disowned, and the pipeline into homelessness. We actually work with students currently that, Oh yeah, I'm going to speak on it. I'm getting there. Yeah. So we currently work with students who are literally
It's almost like, and it made me think as you guys are talking,
the shame associated with even like being not wanting to attach to anything in terms of religious circles or following in a different path maybe than your family or your peers. It's like, why am I getting thrown in the fire? Because I'm choosing to have a different thought about things that is your experience. So we honor you guys' experience. Another round of applause for these awesome speakers, by the way. I understand how that, especially in Black and brown communities, they're literally shunned and disowned and pushed out of the household and not given, it's almost like you don't even get love anymore because you chose to have your free thought or your ideas about whatever, right? Because that's, you're born this way, right?
We're born this way.
I heard that, born this.
well, from my experience starting off in many different religions, I had an aunt who was
Jehovah's Witness, and it felt like hell, literally. Like, damn, this is the regimen. So I understand, definitely. One of the last couple of questions that we have: how does mainstream or liberal or white feminism fail Gen Z BIPOC feminists, and how is your generation challenging those shortcomings? So I'll ask that again because it's a mouthful, right? How does mainstream or liberal white feminism fail Gen Z BIPOC feminists? And how is your generation challenging these shortcomings?
Oh wait, that's the wrong mic, my bad. Thank you. So I'd like to say the first thing is reproductive justice since, oh, thank you. You know I was going to ask. You know I was. Thank you. In which, I think like when we speak about reproductive justice, we tend to think of it through the white woman lens. And first of all, women aren't the only ones who get abortion, and white women aren't the only ones who get abortion. Or white people aren't the only ones who get abortions too. I know, when I see this on Instagram, some like the conversation about reproductive justice and abortions, they tend to be focused on just white women, but they never speak about how Black women are 3 times more likely to die during child labor than a white woman, or Latinos are like 2.5 times more likely to die during child labor than a white woman. And which I know that Bill Gates's daughter goes to Stanford, and she right now is having a huge, she claims to be very progressive, but her progressivism is only going towards white women. And she's specifically talking about being reproductive justice only towards white women. She never talks about Black and brown communities. It's just, and that really shows about the white feminist media, and especially the wealthy, because, she's Bill Gates's daughter, and which what about us? We're important too. We're very important. We are the people who I know Latinos personally, we are the ones that build your houses. We are the ones that serve you. We are the ones that clean your homes. And, Black people are they also are very important as well. They work the jobs that white people don't want to do. We both work the jobs that white people don't want to do. I mean, I'll check my notes to see if I got anything more. Oh, also the Me Too movement, that's also heavily focused on white women. Whenever, women come out against their abusers, the highlight is mostly just on white women. Black and brown women are usually shut down. And also on top of that, it's harder for Black and I know with me personally, I'm a domestic violence survivor. My father was abusive to me. And I know my own communities, they don't really accept what happened to me because they're well, it's normal in our culture. And what do you mean you were abused? That's not abuse. That's just how we are. That's just what our Catholic faith tells us. You have to be in line, but that isn't said the same way, a white, in white feminism, and I get shut down by people who claim to support me. And I don't think that white women endure the same thing. They're typically they are put on the news. They are they sell books and all this. And I feel that, I'm not looking for any of that. I'm looking for justice, but I feel I don't get the same justice as the white women do. So it's incredibly unfair. that I am not treated in the same way just because of the color of my skin, just because of who I love and my economic like standing and other like things that make me a diverse person.
So I think it's not news to anyone here that the different ways of feminism like historically has been very like white facing, even though there's a lot of like people, women of color, like actually doing a lot of the work. It's like the white people that tend to like get picked up by like media and like remembered historically, even though they were not the ones primarily doing the work. I think this was the case like with voting rights. I can't really remember and stuff like that. And I think that like the awareness of like intersectional identity is kind of like I talked about earlier, like bringing up how like there are different disadvantages like with like intersections like of identity, and I think it's bringing up like more individualism. And I think that Gen Z also in general is more like individual based and like learning how to like develop your own identity, and also the advantages of like social media and internet. And like I think Gen Z is way more like communication based, and there's a lot less censorship than there used to be, and people are more like willing to speak their minds. So I think that Gen Z is like pushing back against a lot of this like movement of beforehand, where it was just like this one experience that was being challenged, but not considering like intersectional experiences as well.
That's the last question. Can I do that? Oh.
I forgot to address the last part. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if I'm speaking so much. You can tell me to shut up if you want. You're free. Oh, thank you. I'm so pleased. But what was the last part with the Gen Z? Like exactly. I'm sorry.
How does mainstream, the last part, feminists, and how is your generation challenging those shortcomings?
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you. I feel like our generation is definitely breaking down those shortcomings because, you know, especially with the help of social media, I think social media is a very much a double-edged sword because like one, it does make us depressed, but at the same time, we are being exposed to issues that like, you know, people aren't being exposed to before. Like I know like probably like, let's say like in the 70s, if a woman was abused, how does she come out? Like, I think now that's the only way I find out that like someone was abused. Like, you know, they come out with a news article about her testimonial, or, you know, she makes, you know, just things on social media. And with those, we're getting more exposure of like the injustices and like various diverse opinions. And those diverse opinions may be like what we believe in, and that we're atheists, and I'm like being accepting of queer people. And with that, like, as those ideas get more and more spread, I think we're breaking down barriers as a generation, and, you know, we're becoming more accepting, more loving, and more humanist at the end of the day, because at our core, we're all humans. We should all love each other for who we are, as long as it doesn't hurt ourselves or other people. And I think like, as we continue as a generation, you know, we're going to have the voting power. Like, you know, the baby boomers are going to die out. We're going to have the voting power. Like, we're going to take power back. We're going to try to fuck shit up. And like, I mean, like, you know, I think, you know, we're probably just like in the meat of it though. Like, we're not the end. I don't know if we're the end, because I think it's going to take more generations after us to continue the work. Because still, even in our generation, there's still like people who still believe very, very like right-leaning views. But I think those people, like their children, they're probably like gonna realize how fucked up their parents are. So like they're gonna also be the change. And so we're just gonna move forward, and we're gonna change. We're gonna change this fucked up world, and we're gonna make it so much of a better place to live.
And that's on period to all of what y'all said right now, okay? Period. As before we get into Q&A, I just want to give a moment for our young people to maybe expand on one last thought. And this is just my random question is, what is one thing you would tell any other young person who may be, you know, wanting to come out as secular or wanting to come out as a nun or having issues? What would be your maybe one sentence of advice to them?
Wait, can you repeat the question?
What advice would you give another young person who may be wanting to become atheist, or maybe won't be wanting to become a nun or non-spiritual? What advice would you give them to encourage them, basically?
I think like with this, like, and like other things, I think people tend to think that there's this like ideal way to like identify as something, but I think it's important for people, especially if they're not in like a supportive area, to just like take things like as like slowly as they need to, or it's like when they like as they feel safely, and not like feel like they're pressuring themselves to be like this perfect like way of identifying.
I just say I try to say to rely on friends, because I feel like Gen Z is more understanding, and you'll want like a support. You'll have a support group with them because they're more understanding. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We live such short lives. Do what you want in your life, because like, do you really want to live the short life you have and like being restricted and being like closeted? No, be who you are as long as it doesn't hurt you or other people, and love who you want to love, and, you know, believe in what you want to do. Other than that, like, you know, there's resources out there, and look for them before you come out. If you know your situation, like there's, you know, I didn't know there was an atheist convention. There's so many like communities out there that are there to support you, and don't be afraid.
Well, I'd love for you guys to give another great round of applause to our awesome speakers, our Gen Z panel. You guys are phenomenal. I just also want to take the time to open it up to anyone in the audience. This is our Q&A portion. If anyone has any questions or any thoughts, want to share with the panel, please, this would be the time. Go ahead, you want? Well, wait, this does stretch long. Okay.
Do y'all take breaks, and how do you find peace among the fight?
I guess taking breaks by doing self-care. I feel like our Gen Z is very good at self-care and knowing your limits and knowing your boundaries and knowing, to set those limits and boundaries and just,
I personally, you know, I do find peace within the fight. It is very hard to know that all these communities are struggling, and people that I identify with are struggling every day, because, you know, my mom's struggling, I'm struggling, everyone is. But at the same time, I keep going because I know that what I'm doing is going to make a change, so that, you know, my children don't have to suffer in the same way I did. And the sacrifices that my parents did by coming to this country were not for naught. And, you know, I do take breaks. I don't take them often because, you know, I feel, me personally, I would never advise this for anyone else, but I feel that I don't need too much rest, because like, I truly love what I do. I love organizing. I love advocacy, and I'm truly passionate about everything I do. But when I do take breaks, you know, I love to play video games. I'm president of my club, of my college's anime club. Love to watch anime. Love to do all these things, and, you know, but take care of yourself. Mental health is so important.
Anybody else?
So what I'm curious about is like generational differences with coming out in various ways. And I apologize if you said it and I missed it, but I'm curious if all of you are out to your families, or are there people in your families that you like, nah, I can't be out with grandma. And then when by out, I mean, you know, sexual identity as well as religious beliefs. So are you out as atheist, non-believer? Are you out as queer? If not, and then also, which one, if you are out in both ways, which one did you find was the more difficult one to address with your family?
For me, I guess I'm actually not very close with my family. I kind of moved out when I was 18, and like I haven't really been back. So my mom, like I don't come out to her like in either front, because she's a lot more like narrow-minded and not super accepting in that front. I've kind of like loosely come out to like my dad and maybe some other like family members, but it's not something that I ever like bring up or like talk about with them. But I'm very out with like my friends and like the people that I.
asexual, panromantic, which if you don't know what it means, I love women, but I don't like having sex. I don't have sex. I don't yearn for it. That's what asexual means, but I do love women. That's why I went to a women's college. But I heard someone say woo for Scripps. I don't know if someone did, but that's where I go. But anyway, no, but it was harder for me to come out, I think, as atheist, because as mentioned, I think at a panel before, someone was like, you can pray the gay away.
Okay, I have a goofy question because I'm always curious, and I ask this question of almost everybody. How do you feel about, in general, how popular culture defines or describes or engages with Gen Z? And then when, like, what is your favorite themes within popular culture?
Just to clarify, your question was about how you feel pop culture connects with Gen Z?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it definitely does. Because like, you know, a lot of the pop culture of like celebrities, they either are Gen Z, they're millennials, or, you know, because most of the people who use social media, and social media is like how celebrities are created nowadays, they're Gen Z. So like most of them are very, very understanding of Gen Z. So they tend to have very progressive values, 10, keyword 10, and which I think they're very open to us. And what was the other part of the question? I'm sorry.
What is your favorite, you mentioned anime and stuff. What is your favorite parts of, what is it that you like to do? Favorite pop culture stuff?
I love rap music. It's my favorite genre of music. And I love anime. I love video games. I'm president of the anime club at my school. I'm actually not on social media that much. I do love like looking at memes. I think they're hilarious. Yeah. But I'm actually like not on TikTok, which I know like every like Gen Z person is. All my friends tell me I should be on it, that I would like go viral and I'm like so funny and all these things, but like it's not my thing. But you know, overall, love anime, love video games. I love scrolling through Instagram memes. I love comics, and you know, I like the more like nerdy side of pop culture.
Thank you.
Same as Belen, I love, my favorite pop culture thing is memes, because Gen Z, we make a joke about everything and we can make anything funny, and yeah. Memes too.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else.
Anyone else?
I wanted to lift up and value the fact that these are first generation youth, and Clay included. Okay, Clay was my mentee from 10th grade, and she hates it when I put her on blast.
I really do.
She is an activist and a visionary, and she leads all our rallies. By the way, we have the Dance for Black Girls rally to push back against rape culture, sexual violence, domestic violence in South LA at Lemur Park in October. And so Clay is spearheading that effort. But I wanted to ask about the first generation experience. Because Belen, you're first generation, Stephanie, you're first generation. Very clear you're not, but still, that's really informing a lot of the disparity with your first generation.
Do you mean first generation in the sense of like to this country
First generation college.
Okay.
Particularly going to a PWI.
Are you not too or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we were talking about like there.
Yeah, I know. Wait, do you want to go first?
No, you good.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to hold y'all up. My bad. But the first generation experience, that's what you asked? It's hard. It's very, very hard. I know, especially, so context, I'm first generation in the sense that my parents never finished middle school, but my siblings are very successful. So, you know, I will never understand what it means to be the very first person in the family to go to college. So clarity on that. But, I still suffered through the sense that, I went through poverty. I still wasn't shown how to apply to college because like my siblings took on the thing that like, we did it on our own, you do it too. And so they weren't helpful, which is sad because like, I feel like when you go through that process of like hardship, you want to help other people, but they didn't want to do that with me. So I still like had to do things overall on my own. But I mean, on top of that, for the first generation experience, some context, I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, and Nevada is 49th in education. And I went to the second worst performing high school in the entire US. My high school was about 80% undocumented. So I think that speaks about the level of education I received. I didn't receive the best education. My high school didn't offer chemistry. It didn't offer like anything above algebra 2. It didn't offer physics. It didn't offer environmental science, literally like anything I need to be pre-med. And which like, how am I supposed to like serve my community if I'm not receiving the training to serve my community? But, I was very, I was very fortunate that I went out of my way to find my own experiences that led me to apply to college on my own. And I was very fortunate to get into Stanford, get into like Caltech. I've helped people get into Harvard. I've helped people get into Columbia and other Ivy Leagues. But at the end of the day, I chose not to go to any of those schools because at the end of the day, I was a closeted queer for most of my life. And I felt that it was time to explore my sexuality by going to a women's college. And and at the same time, my siblings, one thing they did show me was that they taught me that I don't have to go to the most prestigious college in the world. My brother went to community college, but he's an aerospace engineer at NASA. And my sister went to a Nevada State school, but now she's a professor at Chicago, which right here, just saw her yesterday, very nice. But, so that made me solidify that, I'll go where I'm happy, not where like prestige and like where I'll meet like very classist, pretentious, sexist, and racist people, which is also one reason why I chose not to go to anywhere else. Very happy where I'm at. But the one thing about where I'm at is that, they don't understand me. The school I go to Scripps College. It is the third most expensive college in the world. The tuition is $85,000 a year. I'm very fortunate that I have a full ride scholarship there, so I don't pay a dime. But, everyone there, everyone there is extremely wealthy. Everyone there's white. And, they will never understand that I'm brown. I was low income. I starved. I went through domestic violence, like all of them, like they were just pampered by their parents. They went to elite high schools and it's not fair that the college that I chose to go to, because they claim they're so diverse and open to diverse communities, they think that I have the same educational training as any one of my like white friends who went to elite private schools, because I was never offered chemistry. I was never offered physics. I was never offered math. And yet they assume that I was. So whenever I enter like a chemistry classroom, instead of like trying to teach it, they have it flipped in the sense that I'm supposed to like watch review videos because they assume that you took the class before outside of class time and then do like practice problems in class. Which it's not fair to assume that I took any of those classes when you claim to be open to first generation youth. I was never granted those opportunities. And it makes me saddened that, an institution that prides itself on diversity, on first gen inclusion, thinks that first generation people have the same training, have the same opportunities as the white women who go to the third most expensive college in the world and went to elite high schools. I guess I'll add like 5 more words. I love my college. I just don't like that the STEM department does not really help me because they all just assume that I have training. I don't. But nonetheless, I'm not going to let that drag me down. I still want to be a doctor. I'm still going to serve my community because I know the structure. I know the issues that my community goes through. I've seen people die. 40% of people who died from COVID in California were Latino. That's a huge issue. And which we need more diverse doctors. Latinos make up 20% of the US, but we only represent 5% of doctors. Black people represent 20% of the US, only make up 6% of doctors. And that leads to the health disparities that, like I mentioned, child labor, We're more likely to die in child labor. We need more diversity. We need more people who understand the cultural differences, who understand that, that just understand this as a whole, who look like us, because, our Black and brown babies are looking at their doctors and thinking they'll never be able to be that because they don't see themselves in that, and which I want to try to be the change to do that. And I don't care if my institution isn't supporting me. I will go to community college afterwards and get my prerequisites done for medical school, and I will go to a medical school.
One last question from our audience. Sorry, I'm lazy, obviously.
Long day, you're not lazy. So my question for the three of you, let's scoot back here, I don't want to be in anyone's way, is you were mentioning that people need to see themselves and that your white counterparts have no clue of what it's like and they're making assumption. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term white woman tears. Yeah. Okay, so in the context that they take over a lot of things, like the Me Too movement was started by Black women. Absolutely. And then we look at missing and exploited children and women. It's the blonde white women that are getting the attention.
Yes.
Our communities are often overlooked. So in a genuine one-on-one conversation, what would you say to these women to get them to understand? Because they're going to look at TV and say, no, that's not me. It's not true, because they see predominant media that reflects them. From the suffragist movement and trying to get women to vote, they've excluded Black women. They've excluded women of color because they wanted that control and that authority. So I know it's a whole lot of things thrown in there, but you attend a school where there's privilege, and you're attending Berkeley. I mean, they're trying to be so liberal, but they don't understand that they're liberal in their ideas, but not liberal in the way they apply them.
Action.
Absolutely. So that's my question. What are some of the individual conversations to say, you're not as liberal, you're not a feminist if you're trans exclusionary. So what are the ways that you would explain that? Thank you.
Y'all want to go?
Rock, paper, scissors.
So I have faced this issue my entire college career. My roommate is white. My partner is white. Everyone in my clubs that I am leadership on are white. There is very little diversity that I interact with. Sometimes I feel isolated from my own Latino and people of color communities at my own college. But every time, they speak about their own life experiences, I always feel the need that I need to talk to them about mine, because I know that one of my good friends who I'm having issues with right now, she is about to graduate, and she's struggling to find a job, and she tells me that she's struggling to find a job because of affirmative action. I'm having a lot of issues with her because I feel at her core she's nice, but I don't know what to do. But what I tell her is that you will never understand what I went through. You will never understand what a Black person has ever gone through. I know that you were pampered by your parents, that you went to an elite private high school that was predominantly very white, very wealthy. And, your entire life, you're from Silicon Valley. You live in a house that's $5 million. I'm sure there was very, very little diversity that you've ever interacted with. And I know you go to a liberal arts college, but and you claim to be so progressive, but at the same time, it's not because of affirmative action. Maybe you're just not competitive enough. Because Black and brown people work their asses off and we get those jobs. We secure the bag. And which, I always tell them that, and through that, you didn't go to a public school where you saw your own classmates get deported mid-class. You didn't starve. You didn't live in poverty. You weren't policed in your own neighborhood. You didn't see all of this. There were a lack of police in your neighborhood. You were fed by a private chef. My mother and I ate cheese slices sometimes. You didn't. You and I are different, and you need to understand that.
And I believe we're going to mic drop on all of our awesome panelists because you guys are on fire. Can we give it up for our panelists again? And another, hold on, round of applause for Miss Sakibu for helping to put this on. It's an awesome panel on. I already got them, yes. Anyone who spoke today, make sure you get one of our stickers. This is actually being sponsored by one of our events that we're putting on, Standing for Black Girls. It says, defining ourselves for ourselves. And that's exactly what y'all doing, okay? On period. Don't forget it. I guess I'll just leave with the thought that you guys are empowered. You guys are empowering. You guys are making changes and making strides to really like change the tone and the way that things have been set forth for years, which is funky and it don't work for everybody. We want, what is it, a one size fit all or one size for everybody what makes fit, right? So making sure that every single person is included and not disincluded, and that's on that. Thank you.